Most people quit their cut at the exact same point. The scale stops moving, they've been consistent for weeks and nothing's changing. So they feel like the plan has just stopped working. So they drop their calories, add cardio, or go and have an unplanned cheat meal, and all of those responses just makes the situation worse. I'm 5 weeks into my photoshoot prep and my scale weight stayed the same for the last 10 days. Here's exactly what was going on and what I did about it. So you've got two types of plateaus. You've got a false plateau and you've got a true plateau. Now, a false plateau is something that is going to cover up you actually losing body fat, and it's going to make you make the wrong decision. And the reasons you're going to get these false plateaus when you're in a fat loss phase is down to a couple of different reasons. The main ones are going to be water retention, sleep, glycogen, and stress on your body. And all of these things can mask the day-to-day and sometimes even the week-to-week movement of the scale weight, just like it has for me. When really you can still be losing body fat, your body can still be changing, but the numbers on the scales aren't playing ball. And this happens more than not. Typically, you'll see this after the first couple of weeks of dieting when you see those initial drops from a big change in water weight and getting into the diet phase. And then this is when scale weight can start to get a little bit trickier. And this is where you've got to look at other things like your photos, like your measurements, how you're feeling, how vascular you are. The problem is when you're just measuring scale weight and it can be affected by all of them things, what you can ignore is that your body is actually changing. Now, after the first couple of weeks of being into a cut, it's very common to see the scale weight hold for a couple of days, even up to a week, like mine did for 10 days, and not really seeing too much changes. But this is where you've also got to look at other metrics, such as your photos, such as your measurement, how you're feeling, how vascular you are. So you're not just taking the scale weight as the be all end all of your progress. And then you've got to look at if you're actually hitting a plateau now. And this can also happen, okay? The main reasons that will be is your TDE has reduced, so how many calories you're burning in a day versus how many you need to carry on progressing. Can come down to adherence. The longer you're in a cut, the easier it is to start letting little things slip in. So always check that back. Your actual deficit size might have increased. Obviously, if you drop body weight, you might be 5, 6, 7, 8 kilos down. So there'll be a lot less expenditure now than when you was at the start of your phase. And this also ties in with your NEAT dropping, which is not just your steps, but also how much energy your body has will have a direct correlation on your NEAT, which is any exercise you do, any movement you do, even like me moving my hands here now, that will drop down as you get further into a deficit, as your body's trying to preserve energy. So it's really important to understand is, are you actually in a plateau or is it a false plateau? Because how you deal with them two things will be different and the interventions to change them will be different. If you make the wrong call at the wrong time, that doesn't just stall you, because that can actually sabotage your longer term progress within the phase you're in. So between the 19th of March and the 29th of March, my scale weight weighed 91 kilos in both. And between this period of time, I was bouncing up and down on a day-to-day basis, and I was bouncing between 91 and up to about 92.5 kilos. 10 days of being consistent, 10 days of not missing a beat, still hitting my steps, still hitting my training, still eating off my meal plan. But this is also where it's so important to trust the plan you have in place. I looked at all of the metrics. I could see my body getting leaner every week, even every couple of days at that point. I could see my veins coming through that I hadn't seen before in this phase that I've been in. So I knew that things were changing, clothes were starting to fit a little bit looser, and also just how consistent I've been. So I knew this was a false plateau, and to keep trusting the process and not actually making the adjustments. Now, one of the big things that you'll see when you're dieting, and you might have already seen it, you'll be consistent for 3, 4, 5, 6 days, and the scale weight just isn't moving. And every day you step on that scale in the morning, it feels very, very disheartening. And then one day randomly, you haven't even done anything different, you'll see a big drop. It might be a pound, it might be 2 pounds, it just seems to drop off overnight out of nowhere. And I call this the whoosh effect. And this is something that is actually very common. I see this all the time with the guys that I coach. They get so frustrated when their scale weight isn't moving. We go through this, tell them to look at what they're doing, assessing if there's plateaus, and 9 times out of 10, a couple of more days patience. You can typically see it on the photos first. They might look a bit tighter. They might see a couple of more veins than normal, and I tell them just to trust the process. And just like that, they wake up one morning and they'll always send me a photo of it because they fucking know that it was coming. Boom. They've dropped a little bit of weight off. To actually explain what's going on here, when you're losing body fat, people think that you're going to be losing your fat cells. That isn't the case. Fat cells will either get bigger or they're going to shrink down. Now, when your fat cells are shrinking, the triglycerides in your fat cells are getting smaller. But when they're reducing, as they reduce down, the cell can actually bring in water to take place of that triglyceride. So you may be losing body fat still at the same time, and it's being masked by the fact that water is coming into the cells, and that is what is replacing the size and the weight, okay? And the whoosh effect typically will happen when something triggers it. Maybe you have a rest day, maybe you drop some stress, you have a good night's sleep, you might even have a refeed day. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I know the exact reason every single time why this happens, but it does. That cell is then gonna release that water it's been holding, and it doesn't take much to get that big drop. But that big drop has only come about because the body fat has has actually left the cells. And this is where people get it confused. They think just because the scales haven't been dropping, that they haven't been losing body fat, but you wouldn't be able to get the whoosh without being dropping body fat. In terms of the context of my prep, 10 days, scale weight jumping between 91, 92 and a half. Within 2 days, I dropped 0.6 kilos down for no apparent reason. First time I'd seen consecutive losses in a row, down into new low weigh-ins. And that is the whoosh effect literally happening with my own physique. But if I panicked, if I hadn't trusted my plan, if I'd gone and over-adjusted, if I'd gone and dug myself even harder, who knows if those drops would have come. And this is where it's so important to trust what you're doing. The amount of guys that just measure the scale as a key performance indicator for if they're actually progressing, they get fucked off after a couple of days of the scale weight not dropping, and then they just go and have an off-plan meal, and that obviously ruins the chances of it. Let's say you were trying to lose 10 kilos in 10 weeks. Do you really think you're going to lose 0.15 kilos or whatever that works out to be every single day and on a linear basis? Absolutely impossible. I always compare it like the stock market. Never look at the day-to-day fluctuations. Look at the pattern, look at the trend over the weeks. Okay, you would never wake up and see your stock up or down and then just sell it. Okay, you're looking for that line. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, but that is part and parcel of it, and we cannot change that. All we can learn to do is interpret that data, use it for what it is, and look at the trends over a period of time, as well as photos, measurements, all of the stuff that we mentioned. Now, inevitably, when you are in a fat loss phase, you cannot help that your body is going to have some form of metabolic adaptation. And this is pretty much a survival instinct that we've had hundreds of thousands of years. Humans have not been able to pop to Tesco's or Asda's and go and get food. Okay, it's been a case of we've had to go and hunt, we've had to go and find our food. Okay, so essentially when you're in a deficit, your body still thinks that you are on survival mode. So what is it going to do? It's going to try and slow things down. First thing it will try and drop is your energy levels, and in turn that will get you moving less. And this is where those drops in NEAT can happen consciously and unconsciously. Whether that's you just sacking off your steps because you can't be asked at the end of a busy day, or whether that is you genuinely moving a little bit less. So that's going to be one of the first ways your body's going to try and slow things down. Now, inevitably, the longer you've been in a deficit, the harder your body's going to fight back. So it can start affecting hormones, okay? Testosterone can be affected. Your thyroid can also be affected. So it's trying to start to slow that down. If you watch my blood work video that is on the YouTube, you will see my blood work's going through where that is up so far in my cut, and both my thyroid and my testosterone a little bit lower than I would expect them to be. As you get further into deficit as well, your hunger hormones are going to increase. So your leptin and your ghrelin, which are responsible for how hungry you are and how satiated you then get from eating, will increase, because this is your body signaling that you need to eat more food. This is where it's so important that you're tracking your food either on a meal plan or tracking your calories and macros, because if you have a set point, you know what you're doing, you know where to adjust. Whereas if you're just going based off your hunger, as you get further into a deficit, as you get hungrier, you are likely to overeat, and this can in turn stop you being in the deficit you thought you'd be in, driving you to plateau in scale weight. And then lastly, your body is just going to get more efficient being on that set point. The longer you are, the leaner you get, your body is going to get more efficient. And going from 20% to 19% body fat is a much smaller drop than going from 10% to 9%. So every percent of body fat you drop, it gets incrementally harder to get leaner, because your body is fighting against that. There is no survival benefit from walking around with a set of chiseled abs. As much as we love it, and as much as that is the look a lot of guys are aiming for, it puts you at a disadvantage from a prehistoric survival perspective. So of course your body's going to try and fight that. In the first weeks of a cut, you're going to see a lot of drop off in terms of scale weight, because you're at a high level of body fat, so it's going to be easier to come down. Okay, as you get further into a deficit, as you get leaner, as your body has built up that stress of dieting for an extended period of time, fat loss can slow down. And this is where you've got to look at your rate of gain. Now, when you are 20% plus, you can easily target 1% of total body weight loss per week, and it will come off with relatively ease if you're consistent. As you get leaner, that is going to start to slow down. I always compare it to the toilet roll analogy though. As you get closer to the center of that toilet roll, every percent of body fat you take off is going to have a much bigger effect. Like when you're taking toilet roll off, the closer you get, the faster those sheets disappear. We've all been caught out by that one, lads. What you have got to remember though, those early weeks isn't just body fat coming off. It is going to be a lot of glycogen shifting. It is going to be a lot of water weight dropping off. The middle phase is when a lot of people can start to get disheartened, give up, because they feel like they're putting in constant work. And this is where the phase I'm actually sitting at the minute. Constant work. You're not seeing the scale weight drop quite how you'd want it to. You're not lean enough yet to really be happy with the physique. And because you're depleting glycogen and water from the muscles, you can look a little bit softer, you can feel a little bit skinnier. And this is where guys think they're losing muscle. And it isn't the case. You've just got to keep chipping away until you really start to see that definition coming through and you can see the hard work paying off. Now, when your scale weight does start to hold, and this is where it's so important you get the analysis right of what is actually going on. Because if you're in a bit of a false plateau like I was, and you go and drop your calories more, you go and increase your expenditure with your steps or your cardio, what are you doing there? You're just taking away your tools for when you actually need to make a change, when things have actually stopped working. And it's so important you assess this right. If you drop your calories too fast, too soon, you're taking away your tool belt. Where you're going to take them from later. You're putting your training performance in a worse position because you've got less food for fuel, and also then your recovery is going to get worse because food is going to be the main driver behind recovery. If you then go and increase your cardio, again, you're going to be driving up that fatigue. You're then getting more efficient, you're going to get fitter, so it's going to get harder to burn calories. Save these things for when you need them at the right time. Or what a lot of guys will do is just go and have an unplanned cheat meal. They think they're spiking their metabolism, they think they're restarting it like it's a fucking lawnmower. It doesn't work like that. All that is just a temporary lapse in your concentration, and you justifying that to yourself. And that is going to be the thing that will actually start to plateau your weight loss. You want to be using refeed days, cheat meals at the right time, and you can get a benefit from them. Like you've seen earlier on in the prep series on my channel, when I've been taking refeeds, it's been clean foods to help increase my training performance. And because we've used them at the right times, that has led to continued fat loss throughout. For example, on Monday we had one, a couple of days later I'm at a new low weigh-in. That is a very well used refeed day. But a big thing I'll say is before you go and try and look at any adjustments, audit where you're at. Are you being absolutely meticulous with your execution? The longer you've been in a fat loss phase, the easier it is to start cutting corners. For example, you might be having 70 grams of oats, but you're actually pouring in them very quickly and you're getting 75 grams, okay? You might be cooking with some sauces and oils. You might be caping your food in a load of sauce at the same time. You might start having a couple of drinks that maybe you wasn't having before, like a coffee for caffeine, but that's obviously got calories. You might not be weighing your food out on the scales like you was because you've been dieting for longer and you just got a bit complacent. Everyone gets complacent, even the best of us. I've found myself falling into this trap before in the past. So before you make any changes, go off and meticulously track what you're doing for a week. Be meticulous with your step count, your cardio, everything. After doing that, you've got real information, you've got real data to know if you've actually hit a plateau or not. And 9 times out of 10, going back with that meticulous comb over everything you're doing will actually fix the plateau you thought you was in. Whilst you're doing this audit as well, don't just look if you've been bang on it Monday through to Friday. Look at the weekend, make sure it's fully tracked, and you aren't letting big meals out of the weekend, drinks at the weekend, that sort of stuff affecting your data, because you might have been meticulous Monday to Friday, but if you've gone and had an absolute piss up, or you've gone and had a takeaway at the weekend and not really tracked it very well, that can also be causing a massive gap. And also, like we said, measurements, photos, visuals. Are people complimenting you? Are clothes fitting different? There's more things that dictate fat loss than just what the scale weight is saying. So you've done the audit, you've been meticulous through it, and you're still in a plateau. Now, what adjustments do you make? Now, in terms of tool one, is obviously going to be cardio, steps, or food, okay? I always say to people, what makes the most sense for you? If you're super fucking busy and you haven't got time to go and get an extra 2,000-3,000 steps in a day, or add an extra 20 minutes of cardio a day into your plan, it's gonna make more sense to pull food as the lever, okay? If you've got a bit more time, if you're very, very hungry, you can then leverage output to increase that deficit. It is always done on a case-by-case person, and this is what I always work with my one-to-one clients to manage through. There's plenty of different ways to skin a cat, and there's no point doing things that are just gonna be completely against what is going to be easiest for you to get done, because you're not going to stick to it. And then tool number 2 you can use is actually using program refeed days, and I'd always recommend going for these clean if you want the maximum benefit. These aren't intended to be a cheat day, and these aren't intended to be a reward. They're a strategic tool to help you continue on your journey. Think of it a little bit like a catapult. You're pulling it back to fire yourself forward again. When you have these refeed days, you're going to help with your hunger levels and your hunger hormones, and you're going to help restore your leptin. It's also going to have a big effect onto replenishing your glycogen stores, so you can go in and hit training again hard, which is going to help with training performance and how much muscle you retain throughout your cut. And it's also going to help you drop a bit of stress, a bit of cortisol that can be building, and this can help get that whoosh, because it shows your body that it isn't in a period of famine and food is still available. Now, I'm running these every 10 days on my prep, given the timelines of where we're at. We've got enough float in the timelines to make that happen. You might be able to run them every 7 days, it might be every 14 days, it might be every 3 weeks. It depends how much time you've got, because if you haven't got enough time already and you're already on the back burner, you cannot be going and putting in refeed days. And it's why it's so important that you map out and have a good timeline and give yourself a bit of float in there, so you can use these tools so you look and feel better come the end of your cut. And the third one is a diet break. Now, this is something that I use with the guys who have got more body fat to lose, okay? 15, 20 kilos. And you can't just do that in one foul swoop without life being absolutely miserable. Now, a diet break is a planned period away. It isn't removal tracking, it isn't stop training, it isn't stop your steps, okay? It's a period of time where you can let both the physiological and mental stress of dieting be dropped for a couple of weeks, okay? These can be anywhere from 1 week to 3 weeks to 4 weeks. Okay, it depends on the journey you've been on. It depends on your goals and where you're looking to get to. But again, this isn't quitting. This is a strategic move. Okay, I've used these with guys when they've come down over 30, 40 kilos. I've used this with guys when they've got a really busy period coming up, like over Christmas or a couple of holidays in the same month. We take the focus away from fat loss and actually to replenish in the system, getting you ready to go again. So when you do come back to it, your body's nice and fresh, it's responsive, hormones have been rebalanced, hunger hormones are back in a good place, and you feel ready to push hard again. All of this stuff is the exact sort of stuff that I map out with all of my coaching clients, from what their deficit looks like, how much body fat they got to lose, what the timeline to that is, what have they got coming up social plan wise, what is their training going to look like around this. And the guys that make the best progress aren't the ones that are being reactive to all this stuff. It's all laid out week by week by week. We've got the data to track, we can see the visuals, we can see how they're going. So there really is no chance but to succeed. If you want to see what that looks like for you, I've put a link below in the video, and I'm offering 4 weeks free coaching where we take you through a nutrition assessment week. Okay, we tell you how to set up your diet properly. There's a selection of training plans in there to follow, and you even get an accountability tracker so that you've got somewhere to log this all. We can look at the data and it will get you started in the right direction. So hit the link below, get signed up to that, and let me know if you've got any questions on that in the comments below. But all in all, we have got 5 weeks boxed off of fat loss now. We started at 93 kilos. Our lowest weight so far is down to 90.6 kilos, so about 2.4 kilos. And this is where, if you look at the visuals from when I started and where I'm at now, there is more than 2 kilos of body fat shifted. It is clear in the photos, and this is why the scale is not everything. And this is why you've got to be properly assessing if your fat loss has actually stalled, or if this is just your body playing tricks on you. Things are holding, but there is still body fat being lost and progress being made. Because if I panicked the first couple of times when my scale weight had stopped moving, I would definitely not have made the progress I would now. I'd probably be on a lot less calories, a lot higher cardio, fatigue would be building, and would I actually be able to run and finish this photo shoot prep in a good manner? It would be very, very questionable. So if your scale weight is stalled and you're on a fat loss journey, don't panic. You need to run through the framework that I've laid out. Is it a false plateau, or is it actually a physical plateau? Going through and measuring these things and finding them out so you know how to diagnose them, and as a result, you know the right steps to put in place to move forward with that. You need to give yourself a proper audit and be completely honest with it, because there's no point lying in it. Go through, do everything meticulously for that 7-day window, see where you come back. 9 times out of 10, it's gonna fix it. If you're in that 1 out of 10 that doesn't, it's now about making the right changes at the right times. Do you pull food? Do you push cardio? Do you push steps? What lever makes the most sense for you to pull? Is it time for a refeed day, or are you on an extended fat loss journey? Is it time for a diet break to replenish the stores? That slingshot, pull back before you push on forward. Most people are 1 program refeed day away, or just a small adjustment away from continuing to see that fat loss journey. But it's very hard when you're running the show yourself to not let the emotions of how you're feeling about the situation help you make the best logical outcome. And this is where having a coach makes such a fucking difference, because they look at the data, they look at the photos, and they look at the situation from a logical perspective. That second set of eyes makes such a difference. If you are interested in coaching, there's 4 weeks free coaching trial in the link below. Or if you want to go straight into my one-to-one coaching, do drop me a message on Instagram at ckcoaching13, and I'll be able to talk you through that in more detail. But we are 5 weeks into the photo shoot prep now. We're moving into the business end, so if you're not already, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit it so you can follow along this journey and see where we come in on the shoot day, which I'm fucking excited for as the photos are improving. Thank you once again for watching, and I look forward to catching you in the next video.